FSBO, FSBO, for sale by owner, however you want to call it. This is where the seller wants to try to sell the property all by themselves without the assistance of a real estate agent. Because of course, the goal for every seller is to make as much money as possible on that home. And as we know, one of the biggest expenses a seller has is commission to the real estate agent. So maybe you've bought and sold a couple of times and you think, well, how hard could it be? Maybe I could do it myself. And so you're really curious. So in today's video, I want to share with you some things that I think is really important for a person who is trying to sell a property on their own to be aware of. Now, please know I'm not trying to scare you out of doing this. Man, go for it. If you want to try it, that's great, no problem. But what I want to share with you is some things that sellers are often sometimes surprised by, or maybe especially if you're going to do FSBO, you're not sure how to handle it. So I just want to give you a little heads up on some of these things so you can be better prepared to try to sell that property on your own. First, let's talk about who's going to write the contract, who's going to write this up if you're going to go FSBO. Because a lot of people think, well, I know how to prepare my house. My house is neat, tidy, organized. I can put a sign in the yard. I can put it on Facebook. I can put it on Zillow, or there's other websites for maybe a flat fee. You can put it on there. So I get all that. You can take your own photos. Maybe, you're a good photographer. You've got a good eye. I'm like, hey, listen, my pictures are just as good as any professional. So you feel super comfortable with all of that. So that's good. But once you do get an interested buyer and you start talking prices and terms, who's going to write the contract? So who's going to put all that together? So there's one of two ways you can go about doing this. First, you have to think about, am I willing to pay the buyer's agent some commission if they bring a buyer? And in which case, they can write the contract. They can use one of these standard Florida contracts that we have, or whatever state that you're in, because obviously you could be listening to this from another state. So here in the state of Florida, we have the Florida Association of Realtors contract. There's a couple different versions here in the state. So everybody uses the same ones. So it's easy for the agent to understand the terms, the pros and cons, all of that. So that's nice. But let's say you go, I really don't want to do that. I don't want to pay for the buyer's agent yet. And so if you are willing, let me back this up. If you are willing to pay the commission, I recommend that as you post things online or even put a sign in the yard, put that out there, because if you don't, then what happens is somebody like myself, I'll have a buyer who's interested in the property. I'm going to call you up and say, hey, are you willing to pay the buyer's commission? Yes or no? And sometimes they say, yeah, I'm happy to. And then we can go from there. Sometimes they say no. And actually, before I call the seller, I have a conversation with the buyer about what the seller might say and what we have to do depending on what they say, which direction we need to go or something else if I have to have a special conversation with that buyer so I can make money. And so like I said, sometimes that seller says, oh yeah, I'll pay it. And then sometimes they say, no, I won't. And I feel like 9 times out of 10, when I do call that seller, they're pretty reactive. They're very on guard. They're very defensive. And usually I get a pretty kind of ugly sounding, no, I don't want to do it. I'm not paying, agent anything, and then I hear this whole little thing. So this is what I suggest to you. And this is kind of like my theme through this video as well, is as a for sale by owner, this buyer's spending a lot of money to buy your house. And so this is a huge transaction, of course, and that's why you want to save money. So I get that. But you still need to come off as a professional, okay? Whether you're dealing directly with the buyer, dealing directly with the buyer's agent, dealing with the attorney, the inspector's going to be in your house, all those things. So be a pro. And usually as agents, we're the ones that have to be the pro, even if our customer is being reactive and we have to help navigate those waters. So you're everything. And so if as acting as your own agent. So I do suggest, please be a professional. It's okay just to say, you know what, not at this time. I'm not willing to spend that commission, that money, for your commission. That's okay. No fuss, no muss. But like I said, just be a pro. And so I want to teach you how to not be reactive, but to deal with things well as they come your way. Because sometimes these sellers are a little surprised by some of the things that pop up. Okay, so you decide whether or not you want to pay the commission. If so, yes, then the buyer's agent can write the contract. Let's say you say no, or even the buyer comes to you unrepresented and they say, I haven't even used an agent yet. I just saw your house. Let's talk. Look, can I take a look at it and see what happens? So then who's going to write that contract? So this is what I recommend that you do. Call several local real estate attorneys, I almost said agents, call several local real estate attorneys and ask them, how much do they charge to put together a contract? And then ask, what else do they do to help you with? Do they help navigate these waters? Do they email updates to all parties? making them aware of certain deadlines. How involved do they get? Or do they just write the contract and, okay, we'll see you at closing kind of thing? So understand exactly what they're going to do for you and what those expectations are. Make sure it's somebody that you feel like you can talk to well, get along with, so just ask more about their services, because if you ask one attorney, how much does it cost to write the contract, it might be a much higher number than somebody else, but maybe their services are a lot better and you really do need to pay the extra money. It might be a good thing to do that to make sure that you're in compliance and the buyer's in compliance to all the terms of the contract. So that's a really, really big deal. So I'd say call that attorney even before you list the house to figure that out in advance so you have a plan B if the buyer doesn't have a real estate agent. Now there's a chance you could find a blank contract somewhere online. There might be companies out there that sell kind of templated contracts and things like that. I do caution you with that because each state and even different areas have their own laws and rules. So you want to make sure that you are in compliance, because otherwise you could find yourself in trouble and you don't even know it. So like for instance, in the state of Florida, we have certain rules and things that the seller has to do to perform when you sell that condo. Certain, the condo docs they have to provide. And if the buyer doesn't know that either, and the seller isn't aware of that, and the buyer buys the condo and later on they realize, oh, I can't have a motorcycle, I can't have my pickup truck. And then they realize, oh, seller broke the law, didn't provide me these condo docs. Now they're going to come after you. So you want to keep yourself out of hot water. That's why I say it's really good to use a professional to help you with writing the contract, just to keep you out of hot water down the road, even whether it's before closing or even after closing. So that could be a mess. So again, think through if you're willing to pay the buyer's agent, and then who could potentially write that contract for you. Okay, sellers, the second thing you need to know are what are your typical expenses. Now, obviously, commission's a big one, but there's a lot of other things too that are involved with buying a house. So we're talking doc stamps on the deed or the transfer tax, a lien search, municipal lien search, the fee to the closing agent, maybe any repairs you need to make to the house, or any credits that you've agreed to give to the buyer, or even any repairs to the house because of the type of loan the buyer is getting. Now, in terms of general expenses, I can only talk about what is normal for the state of Florida, and then of course hyperlocal here for the Sarasota, Manatee County areas. Just north of us, Hillsborough, Pinellas County, there's some trends that are a little different up there than they are down here. So it's really good if you can understand what all of those are. So let's suppose you do call those attorneys and you kind of figure out who would write the contract if need be. I would ask them, hey, what are typical buyer and seller expenses in this area? What can I expect? Now, of course, everything is negotiable, but if you know upfront what's normal for the area, that's going to help you out. And you're going to be the professional, because like that's what we talked about before. Now you really have to put on this professional hat and understand. So the negotiations can go a lot more smoothly. Let's suppose you've never sold a property in this area, or it's been a long time since you bought or sold something, and what your understanding of what's typical buyer and seller expenses may not be accurate for today. So I don't want you to get frustrated or get annoyed and think, oh, that buyer's agent's trying to take advantage of me and getting me to pay for this, when maybe that's normal. Okay, so you need to understand that. I'm not going to go hyper detail on all this because I can only speak for the state of Florida. So if you're watching this in another state, what's normal for you guys can be very different than what's normal for us. So I would say call that attorney, ask what those things are, even though we know everything's negotiable, really what's typical, what's very average. And then between you and the buyer, you can negotiate a lot better because you're working off of better amount of information. Now, one thing for sure is really the expenses related to the buyer's loan is the buyer's responsibility, unless it's because of the condition of the home. So like FHA, VA, there's certain things that cannot be in a house. So when the appraiser comes out to do their inspection as well, they're going to look at things. So for FHA, one big thing is wood rot. So if they see, wood rot up there by the roof or something like that, and they flag that, everybody's going to look to you as a seller to fix that. So just keep that in mind. Again, don't be frustrated by those things. That's normal. Okay, so I want you to be aware of that. But otherwise, make sure that you know those expenses. Be the professional. So again, you don't have to be reactive. You can deal with things calmly and it'll be a nice, smooth transaction. My name is Jill Thomas. I'm a real estate agent here in the Sarasota area. And each week I like to bring videos just to help you out so you can make really good decisions for yourself, such as selling your home. So if maybe making a move to the Sarasota area is on your radar, or you do have a house to sell, if there's something I could do to help you out, please give me a call. And I get it, not everybody's going to end up landing here or moving from here, but maybe if there's another area you've got your eye on, you haven't found an agent that you click well with, give me a call. I can interview some agents. I've got a great network and I can find somebody who's going to be a really good match for you and will be a lovely help as you go through that process. And of course, keep watching my videos. And if you have any questions, please reach out to me. Down below, I've got a link. You can schedule an appointment with me, a 30-minute phone call, or you can just shoot me an email, call, text. On my website, there's a form you can fill out. So it's all good, all different ways you can reach out to me. I'm here to help you out. Okay, so we talked about who writes the contract. We talked about expenses. So the third thing now, sort of a catch-all, just some common misconceptions. And this is good whether you're going FSBO or not. This applies to a lot of folks. But again, I want, as a seller, for you to be very informed so you can be a professional, you be calm, cool, not reactive, and understand. And again, like I keep saying, what's normal here could be a different normal in another area. So please, if you say, hey, that's not my experience, well, this is the way it is here right now. So that's all I can speak to. Okay, so first, let's talk about scheduling showings. So you want to allow a buyer's agent to bring their buyer into your home. So that's great. But I want you to keep in mind that sometimes with buyer's agents, I might show just your home. I might be showing 2 homes. I could be showing 8 homes in a row. And scheduling showings is probably one of the hardest things in terms of timing it just right. It's definitely an art and a science. And I'm awfully proud of myself when I can stay on track pretty well. But it's hard especially when you're with somebody for the first time. Some people go slow, some people go really fast. And it's hard to navigate that and schedule it just right. So let's say a buyer says, I'm going to be there between 2 and 2:30. It doesn't mean that they're going to show up at 2 and be gone by 2:30. It really means, at least in my area, they're going to show up sometime between 2 and 2:30. So they may not show up till 2:25 and then still be in the house for another 20-25 minutes. So just be mindful of that. Nobody's trying to be rude to you or anything. And then just remind the buyer's agent, hey, if you're running late, running early, just keep me posted. And people are pretty good about that. So just understand that with showings, can be a challenge for the buyer's agent. We can only push and pull our customers so much. So don't be too frustrated if they don't show up when you think that they should. Next thing, I want to remind you that people are emotional, especially with such a big transaction. It's a very big deal. If a buyer asks for something, suggests something, and you are like, what? This is crazy. Don't be reactive. Be calm. Think about it, step back for a moment, think it through. And here's the other thing too, when you go FSBO, a buyer is assuming you're just going to be saving just, bags full of money, right? They're picturing you as Scrooge McDuck in that tub of gold coins and, you're just living it up. So sometimes a buyer will be more aggressive in terms of what they're asking for from a seller when it is FSBO. So prepare yourself for that. You might think, well, hey, I already understand what's normal expenses. I understand this, I understand that. I think I got it down. And they're still asking me for this. So, all you have to do is say no or step back and think, well, maybe we can do something in the middle. So just stay calm, be a pro, because as the agents, usually we're the ones buffering all this. And so there's nobody here to help buffer. So just be calm about the whole thing and don't be surprised. Next thing, disclose. If there's something that that negatively impacts the value of your home or something that doesn't work like it should, you need to disclose it. It does not matter that you're not being represented. It doesn't get you off the hook. If you're aware of it, you need to disclose it, period. Even if you're selling the home as is and you figure, oh, well, let the buyer's inspector, they'll figure it out. They'll find it. That's up to them. Nope, you still need to disclose it. Now, the carpet's worn. That's obvious. You don't need to disclose that. If you've had, say, a small fire in your house, I had somebody who's selling their home with that, disclose that. Even if everything's been repaired, leaks, whatever, what have you, please disclose it, because guess what? In time, your neighbors are going to tell the new owner and they're going to figure it out anyway, and you could open yourself up to liability. So there's nothing that gets you off the hook. Doesn't matter if you've never lived in the house. If you know something negative about the home, disclose it. Huge deal. Still law. In the same manner, fair housing laws. Again, just because you're not being represented doesn't mean that you can violate fair housing. So we're talking race, color, national origin, sex, familial status, disability, and religion. I shouldn't have all those memorized. So you be careful. If you even give the appearance of violating something from fair housing, people could come after you for that. It could be something as simple as, let's say somebody emails you and they request a showing on your home, and something in their email address indicates something that falls under one of those 7 categories, and you decline that showing. They could come back to you and say, hey, you declined that showing because of blah, blah, blah about myself. So be very cautious of that. If you do decline a showing, say, hey, this isn't a good day for me, or this next few days aren't good for me. What about this date and time? So make sure that you don't back yourself up into a corner. Even if you're doing it intentionally, you have to be careful of that appearance. And just, familial status means whether or not, like, maybe people have children, they don't have children, they're married, not married, doesn't matter. That's what familial status is. So be very careful with that. And then, like I said, just don't be surprised by anything. Even though there are certain norms, certain traditions, certain whatever, I don't know, in an area, don't be surprised by anything. And make sure you understand that contract, because let's say we're still in the inspection period and it's an as-is contract, but the buyer asks you, hey, can you fix the AC? Like, I've got some folks under contract right now in a house, and today's our last day of the inspection period. We're asking for like 8 things from the seller, but the house, there's a lot more things that are wrong, but these are things to help them get insurance. So the buyers aren't being picky, and so this is what we've asked the seller to do, and they've agreed to do those things, so that's great. But now if we ask for those things days before closing, then no. So just be mindful of those terms and just really don't be surprised. Be cool, be calm, be a pro. You got it, seller. You can do this. And that's just such a good way to handle all of this, because it can be a very emotional process. I have no doubt that minutes after I'm done recording this video, I'm going to think of some other things I really should have said. But I think this is a great start for sellers. And if there's something I missed, please put it in the comments below. Even if maybe you're in another state, you say, hey, here in Indiana, this is how we handle this. This was a big deal to me. This was my experience. And so that's always helpful to folks. Just the more information, the better. And like I said, then if there's something else I can do to help you out, please give me a call. I truly want to make sure that you're making some good decisions for yourself. And I'm not trying to scare anybody out doing a FSBO. It's just the way it is. And I think these are really practical facts that will be of help to you. All right. Thank you so much for watching. Have a lovely day. Take care.